pilot for today, Sean Seizure Lynch.
Good morning, everyone. This is Sean, and this is 20MinHop. This morning, I'm going to do something that I have been talking about for quite a while, and that is walking you through the pre-flight inspection. I talked about doing it in 9092 Tango, the Coronado 836 Bonanza, and never got to it. Now, got one more flight that we're going to do in the Cessna 152 from Oconto down to Green Bay, Wisconsin. We're at Big Municipal Airport in Oconto, Wisconsin. And this is my home airport for a while when I was completing my private pilot flight training in 1998. Our last segment, hit the link right here, and you can watch our flight into Oconto from Sturgeon Bay. We are going to depart for Green Bay later on, and I thought, hey, this is a perfect opportunity to fulfill what I've been talking about with doing a pre-flight inspection, and so we will carry that out. I have two things with me, obviously for flight. The other thing is right here, it's the 1984 edition of the Cessna 152 Pilot's Operating Handbook, and there is a load of information in here. If you're not a pilot, this is the go-to guide for flight operations. It contains the normal operation procedures, it contains emergency procedures, it contains weight and balance, it contains information on all the systems and everything that you need to know about the airplane. It's in a very straightforward format to read it and get the information out of it that you need to fly the airplane. Now, if you're a flight simulator enthusiast, do you need the flight manual? No, you don't. But for this exercise of doing the pre-flight inspection, we are going to use this because that is going to dictate the flow of how we basically carry out that. And you can see the different points that we are going to be traveling around the airplane so that we can do the thorough pre-flight inspection. So it goes pre-flight inspection inside the cabin, then our empennage, which is the tail, go to the right wing, check the fuel cap and the main landing gear on the right side. Then we'll go up to the prop spinner and the cowling, check oil, check inside the engine, and then we'll move over to the left wing, check the landing gear, brake, fuel cap, leading edge of the wing, and then finally trailing edge of the left wing, and the pre-flight will be complete. Let's get in the airplane and we will get the pre-flight done. For those of you that are well versed in Microsoft Flight Simulator, granted we've only had access really to the program for, well, some people have had access a lot longer if you're alpha tester or beta tester. I have been trying to figure out this. If you notice, we're in drone camera mode right now, and for some reason my camera continues to creep slowly. It doesn't stay locked on the point wherever I set the camera, and I'm very, very annoyed by this. So I'm going to hit num key 5 and reset us. There we are. If you look at the edge of the screen, you can see that the camera is creeping, and I do not know how to cause that to stop happening. So if you know, please remark in the comment section, and I would really, really appreciate it. And I just love to read your comments anyways, answer any questions, hear about your experiences with Cessna 152 pre-flight inspection, any tips that you have. It's a great airplane. It is such a fun little airplane to fly. All right, here we are in the 152 cabin. First off, we want to make sure that we have our documents. So if we're really flying the airplane, we need to have airworthiness, we need to have our aircraft registration, we need to have pilot operating handbook, and we need to have weight and balance. If you're flying internationally, there is also something called a radio operator's license or radio station license. So that is also, but you can simply remember what documents you need by remembering the acronym AERO. A for airworthiness, R for registration, O for operating handbook, W for weight and balance. Okay, so we're going to call that good. Control wheel lock, we want to remove that. There is a pin that fits behind the column of the yoke. You can see the hole right there, and it prevents the ailerons and the rudder and the elevator from being flapped around by the wind when we're not at the airplane. All right, parking brake sets. That's not something in the for-flight checklist, that's actually in the manual. Ignition switch off. It is. Master switch on. So we're listening for that buzz. That's the avionics fan spooling up. We're going to look at our fuel quantity indicators. that they are working. So we're about half tanks right now. Those look good. We're going to drop our flaps. And we're going to turn on our lights. This part, the flaps and the lights are not on our checklist. They're not in the manual, but this is just something I've picked up from many years of flight. Okay, we can see our flaps are down. We can see that the beacon is flashing. We can see that we have our aviation white light on our rudder. Our landing light is on. We can see the strobe light on the left. We can see the red light on the left wing. We can see the green light on the right wing, and we can see our other strobe light flashing. I'll come back in the cabin. We flip all our lights off. And we got our master switch. We want to turn the master switch off because we're on battery power right now and it's not charging. We could literally kill our battery and not have enough power to crank when it's time to start the engine. So we are complete for cabin inspection. Now we're going to go outside again and we're going to check out our tail, the empennage area of the airplane. Beautiful Wisconsin morning here. I can really smell the avgas and the fresh cut grass and feel the cold on my face. I mean, this is just so incredibly realistic. Okay, so this is the empennage of the airplane. We're going to be looking at the bearing, make sure that there's no cracks, that it's in good shape, that there's no dents there. And we're going to look at our elevator here, look underneath, looking above. We've got the static wick there. I want to make sure that those are intact and good shape. Left elevator is working good. Check our rudder. Rudder's good. Now underneath the rudder is this cabling here. So that's something that we do want to also inspect. Make sure that we have good connection. They are connected by some bolts. So we want to get down here and make sure that that is secured. And when we move the rudder, that we can see that the cable is functioning on both sides. All right, definitely those rods are secure. And we can tell that the gust lock has been removed. Our tail tie down, we definitely have our tie down untied. That's very important. You can see this bolt and loop. That is where we would tie down the airplane, take a chain or take a rope, and we loop that through so that the airplane, when we're not at the aircraft, it doesn't roll away on us. Being that the Cessna 152 is just under a couple thousand pounds, if there's a strong wind, it could roll, or a wind get under the wing and flip the airplane over. It's not an uncommon thing. So our tie downs protect the airplane from being mishandled by the wind. And control surfaces, again, we've already checked the left side. Now we'll have a look at the right side here. We have good freedom of motion on the elevator. That we have our static wick here, and the other part is our elevator trim. So this is the elevator trim tab, and we want to make sure that that also is in good shape. There is a piano hinge there, so we want to make sure that the piano hinge that has all its bolts and that it's connected firmly to the aircraft. All right, again, we're just looking for the condition of our bearing here and making sure that on the right side that there's no dents and that everything is in good shape. Now we're going to start just checking the side of the fuselage here and making sure that that's looking good, everything's smooth, that we don't have any dents in the airplane. Going underneath and looking at our radio antenna, making sure that that's in good shape, and then as well as our comm radios as well on top of the aircraft. We've got our navigation blade antenna here, so we want to make sure that that's in good shape. So empennage check is complete. Now we're checking the flaps. With the flaps, we want to just make sure, we want to take them, put our hand on it, and just give it a wiggle, make sure that everything is secure and that it's firmly attached to the airplane. Then underneath the flaps are some rods and some bolts, so we want to just have a look underneath there. So you can see one of the connection points right there, and the other connection point is right there. And we're just looking in there to make sure that they're firmly connected and that we see the bolts. Now we move down the wing and we check our static wicks on the right aileron here, and we make sure that the ailerons have good freedom of motion and are connected to the airplane. The ailerons are looking good, and the ailerons are very, very thin aluminum, so it is critical that we want to just check this trailing edge to make sure that there's no dents or anything in the surface so that it is airworthy and in good shape. Now we're going to check our light. We've already checked that it is operational, but we just want to check our wingtip and make sure that our wingtip hasn't taken any kind of damage or dents. And now we'll run our handle on the leading edge of the wing, making sure that that's good. We've got our right wing tie down point right here, making sure that the wing is not tied down. And then we're going to check our strut to ensure that it's in good condition. And lastly, for the right side, we're going to look down and check our tire and check our brakes. So for the tire, it's not like checking the tire on your vehicle. We're not going to get a tire pressure gauge out and check air pressure. We just look at the condition of the tire and make sure that there's no slices in it, flat spots, damage, visual damage to the tire. You know, they'll say kick the tires like the fires. So we do want to at least look at the inflation of the tire from that standpoint. Does it look like it's properly inflated? We don't actually check the tire pressure, like I said, with a tire gauge, because most aircraft tires are filled with nitrogen and they hold air pressure very, very well. So if we start checking the air pressure, we don't have a readily source to fill the tire up. You know, chances are we're going to deplete it, and we don't want that to happen. To call aircraft maintenance out to fill our tire with nitrogen is probably going to be about a $45 visit by the mechanic or more. So we just look at the tire. We don't actually check the pressure on that. You can see that we have a step on the side of the airplane. The step is right here, and we also have this device right here. That's also a place to put your foot. So at this point, we're gonna we have a handhold right here. Step up, and we're gonna check our fuel cap. We're gonna make sure that the fuel cap is in place. We're also going to visually inspect our fuel, that there is fuel in the wing, and that it's to a point where we expect. So if we just had the aircraft fueled, we're going to visually inspect that the fuel level appears to be at the level. There's also something called a dipstick. Put that stick in our fuel tank to see where the fuel level is. You don't want to use your hand to check where the fuel is at. Aviation fuel, if it gets on your skin, it has a tendency to dry your skin out quite badly. You want to limit your contact to aircraft fuel on your skin. So we use a dipstick so that we can visually inspect the fuel level. Then we put the cap back on and make sure that it's secure. At this point too, we are above the wing, so we can do a visual inspection just at the top of the wing to make sure everything looks okay. That if the airplane is in a hangar, that something didn't fall from the ceiling and cause a big dent on it, and then we can visually check our comm antennas on top as well. And lastly, for our wing, so underneath the wing is a sump point. Can't really see it here. That looks like where it should be. And the sump point, we have a fuel tester that we has a pin. You put the pin into the fuel test point, and it will drain some of the fuel out of the wing. And what we're doing there with our fuel tester is just to make sure that the fuel is good quality. Aviation gas has 3 separate colors to identify the type of fuel. So we have blue, which is 100 low lead, we have green, which is 100 octane, and we have red, which is 85 octane. It's universal in the United States that most airports, if you get aviation gas, it's going to be 100 low lead. So you want to see that if you've ordered 100 low lead, that you have that blue tint in the fuel. You're also checking for any kind of particles and any kind of water that might be in your fuel. It happened to me once. I was about to go flying, and someone left the fuel cap off of the airplane, and it had rained, and there was so much water in the wing that we had to scrub the flight because the aircraft had to go into maintenance and have the tanks drained so that they can get all that water out of the wing. Oil, just like oil and water don't mix, water and aviation fuel in an engine do not mix, and that will literally kill your engine if the fuel tank is saturated with water. So very, very critical to make sure that you have good quality fuel, and that's what we're using the fuel tester for. And one last thing with the wing is this air vent right here. This is where airflow comes in for the air vent. So we want to make sure that there's no bird nests or anything lodged in this airport right here. We also have this airport right here that we want to check and make sure that it is free of any debris or any kind of bugs or anything in there. And next we're going to do inspection on our aircraft engine and oil. So this port right here, push the button, this flap will open up. We just do a visual inspection inside the engine and make sure that, again, like it's free and clear, that there's no birds or anything that have gotten in there. And then we're going to pull the dipstick for oil, and we're going to make sure that we have the proper amount of engine oil. And for the 152, we want it to be between 4 and 6 quarts. And you can see in Preflight here that the checklist says 6 quarts if you're going to be flying for an extended period. Inside of the engine compartment, there is a fuel strainer. It's a small lever that you pull, and it will drain the engine sump. There's just a little port on the underside of the engine. You will see a stream of fuel come out from there. In the pilot's operating handbook, it suggests that you use a fuel cup to catch some fuel from underneath that fuel strainer. That's very, very difficult to do by yourself. When I was doing pre-flights on the 152, my flight instructor's like, just ignore that. He said that unless you have somebody else out here, it's relatively impossible to do without getting fuel all over yourself. So it's like, just give it a good 3 to 5 seconds and that'll get anything out. And if your wings are clean, it's a good indication that your engine fuel is going to be clean too. All right, now we're going to check propeller and spinner. So we're just taking our hand and we're running our hand against the blade of the prop and just making sure that there's no serious nicks, scratches, dents in the propeller, because that's basically harming the integrity of our propeller. We do the same thing for the spinner hub there. Again, making sure there's no dents or anything in the spinner. And then obviously our lower blade too, we're going to run our hand on the blade and make sure that everything's good there. While we're here at the front of the airplane, we're looking inside the engine housing as well, making sure that there are no bird nests, anything lodged in there, making sure that everything is good. There is a cable behind where the prop spinner is, so we just want to pull on that cable, make sure that we have good tension there. There we have our landing light, make sure that it's in good repair, that's not cracked or anything like that. We already know that it's working because we checked the illumination at the beginning of the pre-flight. And then we also have our air filter here on the front of the cowling, and so we want to make sure that that's in good repair too, and that there's no clogs or any kind of visual blockage there. And then we have our front strut as well. So again, we're checking, we don't have a brake on the nose gear. We're just checking the repair of the tire, making sure there's no flat spots, scrapes, cuts, and that it looks like it has good inflation there. There's an oleo strut here too. You can see it here. It's a cylinder that is a shock absorber, and so a practice that I've gotten into doing through my experience is putting some weight on. You put your hands right at the center of the hub there and just give the airplane a little bit of force and just see that your strut retracts and extends to make sure that it's in good shape. And we want to make sure that there's no oil and anything just leaking out of the bottom of the aircraft too. That would be a sign that we definitely have some kind of a problem that we should contact maintenance about. Depending on your type of Cessna 152, if it's a training airplane, it might not have been cleaned very well. So if the underside is dirty, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have a problem. It just means that probably the airplane's clean. But if you can see visual oil that looks fresh, then that should be a concern that you might have some kind of an issue with the airplane. And 2, if the aircraft has been sitting and you go and pull the dipstick and it's not at 4 as your minimum, then obviously the aircraft needs oil, and it is possibly indicative that you have some kind of a leak somewhere in the engine system. Now we're on the left side of the airplane, and we're going to do the same thing with our step. So we're going to climb up on the wing, check our fuel cap. So we're going to take that fuel cap off, make sure that we're visually inspecting our fuel level, get your dipstick in there, visually checking that you have the appropriate fuel level. There are some nice dipsticks out there where you can it's actually marked. So when you stick it in, it'll actually show you how many gallons are in your tank My grandfather had one for his airplane. It was really nice to visually verify how much fuel you have, because sometimes your fuel indicators in the cockpit, they're not the most accurate things. So to visually inspect that you have 8, 9, 10 minimum gallons on board, that's a very, very nice thing. Obviously, if the wing is topped off, then that's an easy tell to visually inspect the fuel. However, if you're flying with half tanks or less than half tanks because you're just staying in the pattern, dealing with an airplane that burns less than 6 gallons an hour, you don't have a problem there. You can take off with 18 gallons, but you can take off with 12 gallons if you're just going to be in the pattern for an hour. Not a big deal, but you still want to make sure that you do have the minimum fuel you need to carry out your flight adequately. And then while we're on top of the wing again, we're just checking the top of the wing and making sure that our comm antenna is in good shape and that nothing fell on top of the wing. All right, now we're doing our visual inspection of the left wing. So we have our air vent here as well on the inboard leading edge, making sure that's good. Something very critical on this side is our pitot tube. Our pitot tube is where we get our airspeed from. It's ram pressure, which means that air is forced into this hole, but there are a series of vanes and wafers inside the aircraft, and that air pressure differential causes the airspeed indicator to detect the forward velocity of the airplane. So we want to make sure that there's no blockages there. The other thing we have to check is our static port as well. There's not actually the pinhole in it, but static port is where we get our altitude from, and our vertical speed indicator is a static instrument. It's a small hole. It's like a 1/16 of an inch wide, but we need to make sure that that is clear as well. Looking at our tire, again, check for visual inspection of inflation, making sure no rips, cuts, flat spots on the tire, and then just come over and look and visually check the brake to make sure that that looks good, that you can see the cable there, make sure that that bolts are everything in, that's firmly in place. Checking our leading edge. One other item that we need to check on the leading edge is this little port here, and that is what controls our stall indicator. Depending on the type of airplane you are flying, there may be a kind of a flip switch that comes out of the leading edge, and you can literally take your finger and flip the tab just like that. On the Cessna 152, it's a Venturi, so what you're going to do, you don't have to do this, but some people will actually put their mouth on it and they'll blow into it, and the change in air pressure will cause the stall horn to go off. Sporty's Pilot Shop, other pilot shops actually sell this device that you can put over it and just squeeze air into it, and that will trigger the stall horn as well. That's not a completely necessary thing. You can just look in that. That's a part of the airworthiness inspection that a mechanic's going to do during your annual inspection to make sure that that's good. So as long as you're looking in there and checking that there's no obstructions or blockages, then it's fine. Thank you to the drone camera for zooming in here. We also have our tie-down point for the left wing, so we're making sure that that is untied and good. And we can do our leading edge visual inspection here. So there are some handy things with the drone camera. I wish I had control over this to understand how I can switch it off and on. Okay, now we go in and check our wingtip here. Looking good. Trailing edge, static look in place. Check our aileron on the left side. Good there. Check the underside, make sure it looks good. Again, left flap, grab the trailing edge of it, give it a wiggle, make sure that your bolts are connected there, and it's very cool that you can see this here on this side. This is the rod that controls the movement of the flap, so very, very critical that this rod is connected with its bolt there. And one thing that one way you can indicate or see that it's in good shape is to just kind of grab it, give it a little bit of tension, wiggle it with your fingers, and just make sure that it is firmly in place. We know it's functioning because we obviously put the flaps down. That's a good thing. But one other thing to do as a part of my walk around inspection And then finally on the left side as well, we're going to go to that fuel sump and we're going to check our fuel sample there. And there also is the fuel tank opening. Doesn't look like it's available on that. So the fuel tank vent is very close to the pitot tube, and it is another small tube that comes off of the front of the wing. It's about 2 inches long, and on a hot day you'll actually see fuel dripping out of it. It almost looks like the clasp here for the door to open. That is kind of what it looks like, but instead of sweeping backwards, it actually sweeps forward. And you just want to make sure that that's clear as well, and that you do, potentially see like a drop of fuel there as well, because in order for your fuel to flow from the tank to the engine, it does need to have a pressure differential, and so that little fuel vent is what causes that pressure differential, and it also prevents, if the fuel is expanding, it will provide an outflow so that your fuel tanks do not get damaged by expansion. Alright, then we're going to just look in our checklist here in the book real quick, make sure that we covered everything else. Last thing I like to do on my pre-flight inspection is I just step back and I do one final look around the airplane. I make sure that the chocks are not under the wheels. I make sure that my tie downs are not connected to the airplane. I make sure that my engine compartment is closed. And I made the mistake when I was a new student pilot. One time I checked the oil. I closed the engine compartment door, but I had left the oil dipstick on the fuel step. The airplane needed some oil, and I told my flight instructor that, and he brought a quart of oil out to put in the airplane. And for some reason I got distracted and I did not take the dipstick and put it back into the engine compartment. Believe it or not, the dipstick was lodged well enough. We went out and flew. When we landed, the dipstick was still there. So that was a major save. That probably would have ended my relationship at the flight school, or if it hadn't ended my relationship with the flight school, it would have certainly been embarrassing for that if that had happened, and it would have been costly too. I'm sure probably to replace that dipstick would have been a few $100s. For me, flying paycheck to paycheck when I was just out of high school, working a line service job at North County General Aviation Airport in West Palm Beach, Florida, Fox 45, it probably would have cost me a flight lesson, because I would have had to pay for that dipstick replacement. So Guardian Angel, watching out for me. St. Joseph of Cupertino, protect those who fly and pray for us. He definitely was protecting me flying that day. But if I had done this visual inspection, just doing this one last walk around of the airplane, that would have definitely got my attention. Okay, so we'll just do one last look around. Yeah, the zoom thing is annoying. Alright, everything looks good. Well, I hope you enjoyed this pre-flight walk around of the Cessna 152. Again, it's a great airplane. It is such a fun airplane to fly. If you're a student pilot and you're out flying the Cessna 152 or the Cessna 150 right now, my hat's off to you. I wish I was in your shoes again. It was just such a wonderful airplane. Again, if you know why the drone camera is drifting like this, please put something down in the comments below. I really would appreciate that. If you'd like to watch my flight to Green Bay, here is a link to that video. And for the 20-minute hop, I'm Sean. So long.
We appreciate you flying with us today. If you enjoyed today's 20-minute hop, please like, share, and subscribe. Any questions or comments, please post them below and Sean will gladly get back to you. We look forward to seeing you on the next 20-minute hop. Until next time, CAVU.